Hey guys, Solomon here. Hopefully you're having a great day. I thought as we continue Hippo Week, I could cover a game from my good friend Kai. A lot of you have probably seen him on the Coffee Chest YouTube channel before. I've also covered some of his play on my channel as well. A solid player who continues to improve by the year. And this game that we see here is actually played recently, not just online or something, but in an over-the-board tournament game. Okay, the 2023 Golden State Open held in Northern California. This game was played in round 6. Up to this point, he's 3 out of 5. Okay, only one loss. He had 1 loss, 2 wins, and 2 draws. So going into round 6, he has 3 out of 5. He actually texted me before both of these games, round 6 and 7, both of which, by the way, he played the Hippo. But we were talking back, back and forth a little bit about the Hippo, how to start things off. And he actually ends up winning both of those last 2 rounds with the Hippo and walks away with some pretty decent prize money because of it. Okay. Here's the thing, guys. If you're still hating on the Hippo, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? That's my only question for you. Maybe down in the comment section below, you could go, look, man, I'm not hating on the Hippo, chill out. Or if you are hating on the Hippo, you can let me know why. Okay. All that being said, here, Kai, we got round 6 playing as black, and he starts out with the usual 1, 2, and 3, right? Here we have H6. And E6, knight E7, tucking that knight D7, B6. This is all, pretty normal. I really recommend G6, Bishop G7, and D6. And then from that point, you can kind of mix things up a little bit. But okay, here we have B4 and now A6. I do think that this is a slight inaccuracy on Kai's part. In fact, sure, usually in the Hippo, we do play A6 and H6. But at this point, I kind of avoid A6 almost always if there is a pawn on C4 or A4, and that's because B5 is simply not going to be possible, right? We're not going to be able to play B5 in this game with a pawn on one of these 2 squares. So instead, I would actually look at this move of A5, right? At this point, right? I don't think A5 is rushed if B4 wasn't played, but the moment that B4 is played, okay, we'll play A5. Or even the moment that A4 is played, we can play A5 so that white can't play A5, attacking our pawn. And again, B5 is not possible because of that pawn on C4. So, okay, A5 here. Look, if white wants to take, we'll take back with the rook, right? Not damaging our pawn structure, but damaging white. So white will have an isolated pawn. We're still going to have 1 pawn island there. If white wants to, play something like A3, we can always snatch off on B4 and, use a flank pawn, start chipping away at that center. And okay, if white pushes here, we can castle kingside. Notice here that if we do play A5 and white does push, C5 is a little bit harder to pull off, right? Because there's no pawn on B4, right? So that's one of the purposes that A5 plays. If white plays B5, C5 is going to be a lot harder for white to get in. And this is really the move that white is counting on to break the queenside open, right? Just for example, if white ever plays D5, we'd play E5, and that's just fantastic for black, right? No way around it. Yeah, white has a bunch of space, but who cares, right? Because it's completely locked down, and we're going to have a 2-pawn clamp on that square of C5. So, okay, all that being said, if we do see C5, we can take again with the knight, and black here, up a pawn at the moment. Of course, white could damage our pawn structure as well, but we're up a pawn, and we have a playable game. Stockfish puts this at around even, I think plus 0.46 last time I checked, if white plays it perfectly. All that being said, white's down a pawn, and the pressure is on them to try to equalize this from a practical standpoint. So, okay, B4, main idea there, guys. If you see a pawn on C4 or A4, I usually don't play A6. I talk about that in the course. I kind of reserve that pawn on A6 with a pawn on C4 because I'm worried about moves like A4, right? I don't want to play A6, right? And then face A4 and have to play A5. I just want to keep my pawn here and play A5 when need be. But okay, here we have A6, A3. We'll just continue developing. And at some point here, even at this point, white really should think about C5, right? Expanding, on the queen side, trying to break the game open. There is kind of a lockdown there. And we could technically go up a pawn here, but with the fact that white already has pawns on the light squares here, locking down our bishop, C5, looking to play C6. The computer really likes this move at a lot of instances, but white kind of avoids this. They instead, try to take over H5 with the bishop, knight G6, solid move there. Queen G4, knight F6, fantastic. And black has a great game here. In the game, Kai plays knight takes H5, which I'd still take black any day of the week there. But here we could have seen the move of bishop C8. which is just crushing, right? Bishop c8. He actually plays bishop c8 very quickly after this in the game. But yeah, if you play bishop c8 right now, the queen's under fire, right? If you run somewhere like g3, thanks for the bishop, right? I mean, the only square that white can move the queen to save the bishop is f3. You know, and there's just a lot of ways that we can win this. I think g4 is the easiest one. Just push the pawn, right? Attack the queen, cut off the queen from the bishop, and we're going to go a piece for a pawn there. The computer, though, actually likes knight h4, right? The whole idea being we're attacking a pawn, we're attacking the queen, we're attacking a bishop. You simply can't hold on to everything, right? You just can't. If white tries to hold on to the queen and the bishop, okay, we win the pawn on g2. You know, king f1, we have bishop h3 ideas continuing to attack and pursue on the king side. King d1, we can just snatch that bishop off and play g4. And notice here, guys, this bishop is just kind of hanging out by itself, right? We're going to win the bishop there. Black there is simply crushing. And going back to bishop c8, if white tried the move of g4 here, right, trying to just hold on to everything, knight h4 is an extremely nice move. I mean, again, threatening to take on h5 because the queen is on h3, right? This pawn is pinned. If the queen tries to run away, we can still capture off. And notice here, I mean, black has a great pawn structure here. White here, you know, double isolated pawns, a pawn on h5, which is really not looking too great. An active knight on h4, great control of the dark squares overall. I mean, here we could even break through with f5 and castle kingside. I mean, just fantastic position for black to play with here. This is close to being just completely lost for white, right? But okay, going back to queen h3, this move of bishop c8 was missed, right? With the queen defending the bishop. Instead, we have knight takes h5 and now knight f4. Really good move here from Kai. And now e takes f4. This is perfect, right? Anytime you get this, and again, I talk about this in the course, but anytime you get this kind of pawn structure, right, all leading down to f4, if you throw a knight into that square and it gets captured, you got to take with the e pawn, right? Because it opens up two things. First off, the square of e5 for bishop, queen, knight. This is a great square to hunker down a piece. I'd rather have a piece there than a pawn. And on top of that, this bishop just becomes a monster, right? Attacking all the way down to c3 in this case. Kai here continues to expand on the queen side. Really nice move. Black here doesn't really lose anything from that, right? I mean, I guess you could say b5 is a little weaker, but at the same time, like, you know, bishop a6 could happen if a knight tried to jump in there at some point. And yeah, I mean, if you want to take, we'll take back with the rook, continuing to weaken the dark squares and really attack that pawn on a3. Here, white decides to close things down, and we have queen d7 and castling queenside. Again, great chess from Kai. Really a fan of these moves. And he actually continues here to king b8, kind of prophylactic, right? Prophylactic isn't just, okay, I'm just going to not stop any threats until they happen. No, prophylactic is I'm going to prevent a threat from even happening in the first place, right? So king b8, there's just, for the rest of the game, there's simply nothing white can do on this diagonal, right? So if you ever castle queenside as black, I recommend throwing king b8 in there at some point, right? I've seen Magnus Carlsen as white castle queenside and then play king b1 and king a1, right? You know, generally speaking, if you castle kingside and you have your pawns here, a prophylactic move might not be necessary, right? But if you push a pawn to f4, sure, king h1, right? Maybe h3 so that you don't get back ring mated. When you castle queenside, generally your position's a little bit more opened up. So, okay, let's tuck that king and just get a solid position here. And, okay, I mean, you know, sure, white does have a ton of space, but again, who cares, right? We have a double pawn clamp on c5, right? This pawn and the bishop are clamping down on the square of e5, and there's just no way for white to break through here. Black's king is extremely safe. White's king is the one in trouble, if anything. Okay, now here we have bishop c8. Great move here. White, you know, spends all this time locking down our bishop. Okay, let's make it a more active piece. We now have a breakthrough with the move of f5. We take on e4, queen e7, continuing to add the pressure. And now this move, bishop d7, right? Very solid. We don't want to play bishop b7 and give up options like knight e6 or knight f5, right? Depending on what white wants to go with. We definitely don't want to, you know, get forked here, powerhouse fork with our queen, rook, and king. So bishop d7 is played here. In the game, white just drops a rook on e1, defending that pawn. Knight check could have been played, but I think, you know, bishop takes, we win the pawn on e4. And again, there's just no way for white to break through here. Of course, if they could teleport a queen or something to a6, they'd be just winning, but they can't do that, right? They can't do that. Yeah, and these pawns are just very weak, for the pickings. I mean, even if white tries to play rook b1, trying to break open the b file somehow and make something happen, Hail Mary attempt, okay, we take on c4, and you can't even take on a5 because of queen check followed by winning the knight. I mean, again, there's no hope there for white there, right? So, okay, knight c6 doesn't really do much. So we have rook fe1, which is a much better option that white went with. And okay, black here, just kind of activates the rooks, gets those rooks, locked, ready, activated, ready to go. And now g4, right? Really nice move from Kai here. This is a move that I myself probably would have been a little bit scared to play, but he plays it. And the computer really, likes black's position here. White here could have taken on g4 right away, in which case we have bishop e5 continuing to add the pressure on that pawn. Instead, white plays knight f5, in which case we take, and then okay, they take on g4. White's up a pawn, but I mean, they just have a terrible position overall here, right? White here plays f6. White could have tried to take on h6 with the queen, but okay, I mean, we take with the rook. And it's kind of one of those weird positions where like we're down a pawn, but like our pieces are just much more active and their king safety is pretty terrible, right? This king's on a semi-open file, right? Which is going to get more and more, pressure on that pawn. F3 ideas are also in the air, attacking the rook and the pawn. Yeah, I mean, this bishop's active. A lot of weaknesses here for white that are very pickable, right? Get these things like they're candy. Black, on the other hand, I don't really see any of our pawns that are a weakness right now. Like none of them. They're all very solid. And white can barely even move, right? We have moves as black that can help us improve the position. White doesn't. I mean, even if you play knight d2, we just check, throw the bishop into e3, queen e4. F5 is going to fall. C4 is weak on top of that. I mean, it's just not looking good, right? And on top of that, we're also threatening queen takes f3 with check, right? Followed by rook g1 mate. I mean, white's just in trouble here, right? So going back to rook g5, white here doesn't try to go up a pawn. They just play f6. Notice here, we can't take the pawn without losing the rook. So, okay, let's play queen f8, force the queen to move, and then take on f6. Nice little maneuver there from Kai. Knight d2 is played. We play queen g7, take on g4. White here tries to trade down, but we really just form a triple battery ram on the g file, attacking g2. White here is under a lot of pressure. White plays rook b1. White probably trying to fit this move in, but there's just not enough time, right? Rook g3, and white resigns the game because white has to decide, do I want to lose my queen or do I want to save my queen and then get checkmated pretty quick, right? I did want to mention, going back, that this move of rook g1 also doesn't work, right? There's a lot of ways we can play, but my favorite, I think the one that's most simple, is playing rook g3. And okay, for a moment, it's like, wait, we have 3 attackers. White has, 3 defenders on that pawn. And as the initiator of the trade, we need to have an extra attacker, right? Are we in trouble here, right? Is there no way to keep adding the pressure? Well, why not add a 4th attacker, right? With the move of f3, attacking the rook. Now we have 4 pieces and pawns attacking g2. If you want to take the pawn, we just take the rook. And black here is simply crushing. Nice game from Kai. Again, if you're interested in learning more about the hippo, as you guys see below there with the little hippo sticking out his head on the green tab, I made a course on it, and I think that you guys may enjoy it. Over 6 hours of content on the hippo, and just overall put a lot of work into it, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. See you guys tomorrow as we continue Hippo Week. Hey guys, wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of February in 2023. Appreciate you guys a ton. And if you haven't checked out the Patreon before, make sure to go check it out. There's a lot of Patreon exclusive benefits that you can gain, and I'd love to have you join the crew.